slightly time-displaced balloon has again landed. Hello, people. We're joining you from... Well, we're not joining you from Sweden, but we're...
speaking to you from 2 different rooms in Sweden that look remarkably like our living rooms in England.
We visited Sweden in our minds
Yes.
this week to watch and the latest drop-off on our tour around the world. And we watched the Ingrid Bergman classic, Seventh
Seventh
Seal.
Seal. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good. It's very good.
Incredible.
Obviously, spoilers of this film for anyone who hasn't watched it. Go and watch it first.
Yeah. I mean, it's been out long enough. 1957. What you been waiting for? I mean, saying that, it was
It's
the first time I watched it. Yeah. And I feel slightly ashamed, in all honesty. I didn't because it's
my first Bergman as well.
I think it's my first Bergman.
There is some more on the service, so I think I might try some more.
But yeah, I think it's one of those. I know it's always been a classic. It's always been something that
it's a film that's famous because it's about the knight that plays chess with death.
Yeah,
there's a lot more to it than that. I thought it was mostly going to be death chess, but the surprisingly, while death chess is the main theme, there is less death chess than I was anticipating.
Well, I mean, the thing is that chess realistically is a visual metaphor for life.
Yes.
Because obviously, as a living person, you're constantly playing chess with death to see how long you can live and how well you can play the game. But you'll always end up losing. Death will always win. But it's
how you lose.
It's how you lose and how well you play.
Get to as we get deeper into the discussion. So, film is about this knight played by Max von Sydow.
Yeah.
Recently can be seen in Star Wars: The Force Awakens.
Yeah, and probably most famous in Western films for The Exorcist.
Yes.
Playing the older priest.
Yeah, he plays a knight. And would you say the Middle Ages, roughly?
Yeah, I mean it's during the Crusades, so
the Crusades was a long time.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously the problem is that there is the Dark Ages when we don't know exactly how long the Dark Ages was. So the Crusades and the Middle Ages and what have you. Yeah, as you say, it took.
Yeah, there is a plague
period
happening. The knight and his squire wash up on shore, where death comes to get the knight, and the knight challenges him to a game of chess as a way to elongate his time because he wants answers before going. And the whole film revolves around this journey they take, the travelers they pick up with them along the way as you're introduced to other characters like an acting a performance troupe, and it's kind of Shakespearean in it.
It is, yeah. It's I felt that very much because the linguistic
way they're traveling through the woods and the various characters kind of swing and plot lines swing in and out of each other. Well,
I mean, it's it reminded me of the Town Musicians of Bremen, which is like a Brothers Grimm fairy tale.
Yeah.
Which, if we're going to go real nerdy, is on the Arne Thompson grouping, is an A2 sorry an A2 130 story, which is when basically animals, in this case, in the case of the town musicians of Bremen, escape hardship for a new life. And obviously, this isn't animals, but it's people following a similar track. So the knight has returned from the horrors of war, and so he's on his journey to somewhere new, which obviously he's going home, but he's not really going home. He's going towards the comfort of death. And along the way, he picks up his other folk who are also on their way to the comfort of death.
And it's not a comfort to the knight, though, because he doesn't know. His faith has been lost.
Because of the experiences of war. Because, of course, the Crusades were a religious war. It wasn't like a modern war where it's strictly financial or to do with oil or something like that. It was one of, in theory, God sent you to fight the heathens and claim the Holy Lands. It's made him question his faith.
And he's trying to find proof of a god before. That's why he's delaying the game.
Yeah.
He's trying to make. He feels his life has been wasted, and he's trying to either make something of it or find proof of a god before he goes.
Well, he's even to the point that he doesn't necessarily care if there is where he's going after death, as long as he's going somewhere. Because he's even so desperate to know that there's an afterlife that he would be fine to speak to the devil. Like, he just doesn't want this life to be the only life, because like there's very much
he wants to speak to the devil is because he feels the devil could at least tell him if God is real or not. And there's, on the other side of this, you have his squire. One thing that struck me is that while neither man is necessarily a good man, they are aggressively merciful.
Yes.
In their kind of like the way they treat the witch who's about to be burnt at the stake, for contemplation that the squire's like, I can kill all these knights and we can save her. But instead, the knight drugs her so she doesn't feel the pain. And the people they save along the way, even to the state where the knight throws his final game of chess. So the young family has time to escape.
Yes.
Like, or at least that's how I read that.
Yeah, I think that
he very deliberately, he was always going to lose, but he very deliberately loses in a grand way there.
Yeah.
To give them time to leave his company.
Yeah, I get you. Definitely get you. I think I mean, obviously, it's definitely a film of existential crisis.
Yes.
Where questioning the existence of God, questioning faith, questioning the meaning of life, and identity. And it is obviously questioning identity is something that you find in cinema quite a lot. And this came out in 1957, but another famous film that questions identity is Fellini's 8½, which came out 6 years later in 1963, which is about cinema questioning identity. The notion of through the eyes of fans, through the eyes of the press, through the eyes of the people, what is the identity of a filmmaker? Is it the films that they make, or is it the person that they actually are? And where do those lines cross? And in many ways, that's what the knight is facing, because he is a man of noble birth, who the people will follow blindly. It seems in certain ways, just simply because he wears the noble crest. He has followed God blindly and faith blindly. He has gone and seen horrible things and terrible things and realizes that his life is coming to an end now. And has he wasted his life? And like, so he wants to know, who am I? What am I? And has my life been worthwhile before I die? Because that's the big question that we all fear, that whether we're people of faith or we aren't people of faith, whether we believe in an afterlife or not, will we get to the end of our time and feel that we've done something with it? And I think that's really what the knight is. And obviously, I mean, we'll go into it possibly in a bit more detail later, but I mean, the fact is this came out 12 years after World War II finished.
Yeah.
So there's certainly an aspect of some social commentary on the futility of war. And maybe, as this is a Swedish film, where is Sweden going in the future? What will Sweden do? And I think the fact that the characters that survive, the main characters that survive, are the actors and their child.
Yes, a young family, effectively.
Yeah, is Bergman saying, let's embrace the arts, let's make sure that Sweden is looking to a creative future. Now, Sweden was neutral in World War II, although they did allow the Nazis passage through Sweden because the Nazis had occupied Norway and it had become part of the empire at that point, and and Finland was a sympathizer, because they hated the Russians, and obviously they decided to side with Germany. So they were, but Sweden in theory was a neutral state, but did obviously allow passage. So potentially there is a little, maybe cultural regret in that, maybe. That although they didn't necessarily take part directly in the war, maybe they aided the Nazis passively, I suppose. So, but I mean, I might be reading too much into that. But then that's the joy of cinema, I think. Like, you know, especially when you get given a treat like this, that there's so much to dissect and peel away and talk about.
Visually, it was an impressive-looking film.
Incredibly impressive,
Yeah, the
yeah. I
visuals
mean,
are absolutely stunning.
yeah, I mean, it's beautiful. And it's in Academy format, so it's in 4:3, so old school TV shape. And some of the framing, especially later on when you've got the whole group together, there's, I think it's once you get into the castle, and when death finally turns up, and you actually you see all six of them round the table, and the positioning, it was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I mean, we mentioned it when we talked about silent films and how almost the art of framing in 4:3 now is somewhat lost, and it'd certainly be difficult for a modern filmmakers to adapt their mind to filming in that shape. So when you do see something like that, albeit in an older film, it's mightily impressive because it doesn't feel cramped.
Yeah,
Like it was.
it's a rich film as well in
Mm.
its tone. It's very. This is gonna sound weird, but it's like you've just eaten like a really rich dessert, like a really
No,
kind of
I get you. I get
luxurious
you.
chocolate tart or something like that.
You see, yeah, because it's so more varied then the dark, grim image of Max von Sydow and Death playing chess on a rocky beach.
It's even more varied in its darker parts, like for scenes when the kind of zealots come through who whip themselves.
Yes, well, they're zealots, but they're desperate zealots because they are the plague sufferers. Because it's explained earlier during the scene with the artist and the squire that some of the plague sufferers believe that it's punishment from God, so they whip themselves and they whip each other as penance, hoping that when they do die, God will take them into heaven.
You have a slight villain in a priest as well who is robbing from the dead and tries to drive an inn to kill the.
Well, he was a former priest.
Yeah.
Because or monk, possibly.
He's the one who convinced the knight to go
and fight in the Crusades.
Yeah, it's why, for me, it feels there is that Shakespearean tone to it. It's the way the characters interact and flipped in and out. And when I say Shakespeare, maybe it just feels play-like at times.
It does feel a bit play-like. I think it's because there's very poetic language in it. It's almost like an incredibly long poem set to a film. Like the beautiful use of language is absolutely superb.
And that's what a lot of poetry was about, traveling knights.
Yeah, I mean it's like Canterbury Tales, isn't it?
Yeah.
So like it's very much a classic like story. I mean, obviously I've just mentioned the what is it, the thingy scale.
Yeah.
Oh bloody hell! I've just scrolled away from it. It's literally just disappeared. Oh well, whatever. Oh yeah, the Arne Thompson grouping. Like it very, very deliberately has lifted from various parts of the Arne Thompson grouping. It's lifted definitely from the likes of Shakespeare and from Canterbury Tales and all sorts of stuff like that, and kind of amalgamated it together and made a really, really well balanced, beautiful film. Like, and I know obviously last week when we were in Denmark, we watched the very dark comedy Festen, which is just a comedy, or at least I think it uses the rhythm of a comedy to hit the hard points of a drama. This is certainly a comedy.
Yes.
Like this is very, very funny, incredibly humorous.
I made an off-mark comment to you last night that
yes,
we should have a remake with Will Mellor and Ralph Little. And that was just
maybe.
because
But who would you want to play?
Will Mellor's a squire, Ralph Little's a knight.
All right, yeah.
I just felt a bit of them two in those.
Yeah, I get you.
I know it sounds weird, but
I mean, I think the other thing, like, it's sort of
like I could almost see it as like back when they were making. Thing is, they didn't get experimental with 2 pints really until Ralph Little had left. But I could imagine like a special of 2 pints where they're all dreaming.
Yeah,
and we basically live through a remake of Seventh Seal.
I mean, like I could. Now you've said that, what it's sort of reminded me of is pantomimes. Like, there's certainly an element of pantomime, and like I wouldn't mind seeing a pantomime of the Seventh Seal.
Yeah.
Now you've said like, and I think that might be the way to do the Will Mellor, Ralph Little Seventh Seal remake. Like, do it through pantomime. But I think the I was almost feeling last night, and this is going to seem really like out there, that like this was almost a more serious, less slapstick Carry On film in a way, like because obviously a lot of the Carry On films dealt with like history and culture, and I mean, admittedly, sometimes through questionable eyes and questionable means, but like
Carry On Death.
yeah, it was almost Carry On Death in a way. And like, I know it's a different country, but still part of Scandinavia. We watched Norseman, which is on Netflix recently, and it has almost exactly the same balance of humor, because it is most certainly a sitcom, and gruesome adult themes. Like there's so obviously in Seventh Seal you have like you don't see it, but there is a witch burning. You like the scenes of the people with the plague whipping each other. It's fairly gruesome. It's not gratuitous, but it's fairly gruesome. And obviously it's a story of quite serious nature, but with huge humor. And like Norseman has exactly that same balance of it is a relatively slapstick-ish sitcom, but there are times where there are people who get like sliced in half with a huge Viking sword. It's got the almost has the visuals of Game of Thrones. Sometimes it's that gruesome. So it's interesting to see that like that humor potentially spreads across Scandinavia as a whole, as opposed to I mean I know they're neighboring countries, but it being just exclusive to one.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, it's one of those. I don't. I sort of don't want to keep talking about it too much because
No.
I have a
I
feeling that we could talk for 4 or 5 hours on this.
I weirdly think I love a film, but I don't have much more to.
Oh, I have so like if we really wanted to be awful film student people and just
But
keep going into it and stuff like that, but
he
like
wants to be that.
like
I would
I
just say, what if you haven't seen it, watch it.
I honestly now I think this is in the upper echelon of the greatest films I've ever seen.
Yeah. It
It
it was
it is
lighter than I was expecting.
significantly lighter,
Yeah.
and I
It
mean
was a much. I was looking forward to watching it because it's a film I've always wanted to watch, and we know how much I was not looking forward to watching.
Feston, yeah,
But what surprised me was how easy of a watch
yeah.
it was.
I mean that's one of the
Because
reasons it felt Carry On to me. Like
sometimes
it
the
was,
important films, like what's considered the canon and things like that,
mm,
are good films, but they're not necessarily
easy or
easy to
acceptable.
watch.
Yeah,
Yeah, this was.
I think this
Yeah,
is
I was very pleasantly. I expected it to be good. I was
mm.
very pleasantly surprised at not how good it was, but
I mean, I was like
I was
I
surprised at
I
how
got
enjoyable it was. With
mm,
I had a chance, but I missed it to see it in the cinema once.
yeah.
Well, not in a university cinema, as opposed to
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
but the university in Stoke, they had it wasn't like our lecture hall. They had a proper little
Oh
cinema.
yeah, yeah. Some of them do. Yeah, yeah. I know
Uh,
Reading does as well.
yeah, and I could have seen Seventh Seal on on there, but I missed
mm.
it
I mean, it's certainly one I'd be tempted to if I ever saw it in a little
yeah,
independent or something like that.
because I imagine
Uh,
that picture on the big screen because it's black and white film,
mm,
which his age doesn't necessarily give away because films were color back then. as well. But it's so. This is getting into kind of camera nerdery a little bit, but so
And why not?
tonally rich in its black and white for the
Yeah,
contrast and the
it's almost got the level of contrast that color does.
yeah.
Like it's it almost felt like yeah, it was so full of like it was so beautifully shot, and as you say, the contrast was so rich that it almost did like it
Like
felt like
when you're
watching it.
introduced to the actor and his ability to see things.
Mm,
Well, the performer, he's not really. It's the head of a troupe. That's the actor,
mm,
really. And I love the relationship it builds between him and his wife as well. How genuinely loving
mm,
it is. And but when they're in that meadow, effectively,
yeah.
I had to remind myself it wasn't actually in color. Like,
I had to remind myself at one point it wasn't in widescreen because again
yeah,
it's so beautifully done and it's so rich and so deep um and especially coming off because it's immediately after the introduction of the knight and his squire, and when you first see a person ravaged by the plague and the birds have plucked their eyes out and what have you. And so you've come off this very stark, very dark opening where the black and white is used perfectly to make you feel cold. And then you go to the next scene and you feel really warm. It's like watching like the hilltop sequence in Sound of Music or something like that. And it's masterful, absolutely masterful. I it's it's rare you see a film that I think you could say is flawless, and I think this is as close as it gets
yeah,
to being flawless. And I think, unfortunately, I think for the one of the reasons I haven't watched it until till this time is I always expected it to be incredibly heavy. I think I
yeah.
think the advertising for it, the posters for it, the imagery that you conjure in your head when you think the Seventh Seal, um, do it no justice at all. There are probably millions of people who have never watched this film because they think, oh, it's going to be too
But
heavy,
I know
or
I
and again
keep
because of the black
bringing.
and white, they'll maybe
I
think
know
it's
I,
too.
I know I keep bringing up the Shakespeare
Mm,
comparison, but in the same way that a lot of people just assume all Shakespeare is heavy,
yeah,
but it's not. Shakespeare
mm,
has his "As You Like It" and his
yeah.
"Much Ado's About Nothing," and I think it's "As You Like It" that this kind of reminds me of a little bit.
I get you. Yeah. Um, Although it's got its because it's got its darkness, almost it's almost the perfect mixture of Shakespeare's comedies and
And tragedies.
with a little bit of like the Hamlet and Macbeth. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like um, yeah, it's very, very, very good. I like
recommend it
can't
enough.
recommend it
Yeah,
more. Yeah. It's
I'm definitely going to watch more by him.
yeah, certainly. Me too. I think if we were ranking these, which we're not, but if we were, I think this could possibly take the top spot so far of our 7 films we've seen on our round the world trip. It certainly gets 5 out of 5 on the cold light of day scale. Um, yeah, I think
Yeah, I think on that note, you're getting a slightly shorter episode.
slightly shorter episode, but I think as I say,
But use this extra time you've got to go and watch a film. It's also
yeah,
not that long.
no, it's about 90 minutes, isn't it?
Yeah, about 1:37,
Yeah, yeah.
as in 1 hour 37.
Well, that's including credits at both ends.
Yeah.
So, like,
I'll. Where is it? We're taking a balloon next, Matt.
we're off to Finland next, which, depending on what cinemas are open while we're there, We are yet to decide
Yes.
what we're watching. We think we know what we're watching. We hope we know what we're watching, but it just depends on whether it's on.
So we will see you next week.
In
And
Finland.
stay safe.